Everybody to this special City Planning Committee meeting. We have Alderman Briscoe, Councillor Dutta and Councillor Coates and Councillor Harvey here. So no apologies, nor leave of absence. We have nobody to co-opt.
Barack is starting to go up the stairs.
Item 2 is indications of pecuniary and conflicts of interest. There being none. Item 3, committee acting as a planning authority. And item 3.1, and we have deputations to hear. Can I have somebody move that, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Alderman Briscoe. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Items carried. So we hear firstly on the matter of 51-1 Collins Street visitor accommodation, change of use to visitor accommodation. We have Mr. Richard Fowler. If you'd like to come forward, Mr. Fowler. And I think you've met the committee before, so you have 5 minutes to address the committee with your concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillors and Aldermen. I'll give you a quick summary of Wanacon Street, the complex. Wanacon Street is constructed with a tower and more aptly to try to describe with it as 2 wings. The tower complex has 45 units, and the wings on Conn Street and Brook Highway have 19 units. The tower is secured by doors and gates, and only the residents can access the tower. The residents in the wings have their own secure entrance via a gate on the above streets. The tower is occupied by mostly elderly folk and healthcare workers. There are 2 families. The major reason for why people have bought there or are long-time residents because of security, safety, the feeling of belonging to a small community, quiet occupancy, lifestyle. Only in the last few weeks we have seen the Council consider safety and security as a major issue for the community of Hobart, with her moving on the Nights Safe program to a more suitable place of operation. There is a significant difference between owners and long-term renters and that occupy the unit versus short-term occupiers. This is borne out by some examples of complaints caused by short-term renters. 1. Ingress and egress from the garage, going the wrong way in and out of the garage and the wrong way to down Sun Street. 2. Inappropriate speed by cars in the garage, causing damage to the garage doors. 3. Often incorrect parking space. 4. Dumping rubbish in the wrong counts of bins or on the floor outside the units. 5. Leaving gates open and enabling access to some units in the tower and cars. 6. Using the swimming pool and gymnasium in complete disregard to the bylaws. 7. Partying, example a pair of jeans thrown over the balcony plus numerous cigarette butts. 8. A tent flying off the balcony and landing on the foyer entrance. 9. Key scratch marks in the foyer. These are just some of the examples. As I understand, there are now 3 units that have council approval to operate short-term stays in the tower. If council approves this application and the next unit, it will bring the total to 5 in the tower. That is over 11%, which I believe is not in accord with their planning direction number 6. I also do not believe performance criteria in the planning directions are 6. Being satisfied, example 200 square metres, privacy, noise, scale use, retaining primary residential function and safety of the local road network. In addition, in my opinion, the Council's own community vision, Pillar 7, will be contradicted under 7.24, 7.42 and 7.43. Further, if the application is approved, it would necessarily increase increasing return to the tower complex where these elderly and health workers live, and a hotel motel lifestyle accommodation. Collins Street Tower is not geared up to be this type of accommodation. Certainly, to compare the Old Wool store, which the staff did, to Collins Street, does not equate. They are poles apart in terms of short-term visit accommodation. The increasing number of short-term rentals is changing the character of the complex, so that instead of a community that supports and looks after and out for one another, it is becoming similar to a hotel, with people coming and going at all hours, with little or no consideration for other residents. Council staff have made an assumption that the unit will operate in a similar fashion compared to a permanent residential unit, but they cannot predict or guarantee this. How can council staff make this prediction when they haven't conducted an internal investigation into the complex? Furthermore, the council staff had not undertaken a comprehensive study to indicate the impact of amenity and characteristics that they have no official data available to support this number of visit nights.
Mr Fowler, would you like to summarise now, please?
Yep. Just one more paragraph.
One more point, yep.
Council staff are saying to, so long as a managed plan is adhered to, they assume the visitor accommodation in the unit would not have an acceptable impact on amenity. I respectfully state to the council staff, if you haven't lived in a complex such as this is a huge assumption. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Norman. We hope your decisions will support our little community in the complex. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of Mr Fowler? Alderman Briscoe? Then Councillor
Thank you for that. How is the move going to change the bylaws for?
Sorry?
What stage are you at to the bylaws?
Sorry. We're going to have a poll of all the residents in the complex.
So you have a proposal to change the bylaw to reduce or to cap the number of.
Some words. I went to the lawyer, and he's got some words to implement. But the first thing is first to have a poll for all the owners of the complex.
And how far away is that?
Very soon.
Thank you.
Councillor Data?
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned about complaints. Have you made any complaints to the council, or have you just made complaints to the board?
Unfortunately, the strata manager can't list all the complaints in his data bank. So we've done a run around all the complaints that we know of. We had a meeting with the strata manager probably a couple of months ago, and he's provided a system we can complain to the strata manager, and I think the manager complains to the council.
Just one follow-up question, Chair. Thank you. With regards to the point you have made, would you agree if we have a management plan, would that in some way help the situation?
My view is no, because I'm not sure that. I think in your notes that there's two management plans in vogue at the moment. There's four or five in the complex. And there's only two management plans. One is 53. I don't know whether the other one is. So without that management plan and on track, I don't believe it can be enforced. Who's going to call who? So do we complain to the real estate guy or the owner or the renter, or it just doesn't work, in my opinion.
Any further questions? Alderman Barakis.
So just to follow on from that, if there was a management plan that did actually have a set of rules as far as if there is a breach or concern or something, complain to this person at council or complain to the property owner or complain to the person who's managing the property, and there was a key sort of contact person there that somebody was responsible, would that ease some of that concern?
Well, you probably would, but who's going to contact who? Are we going to contact the owner all the time, contact the real estate all the time? Certainly we can knock on the door, so we'll put the music down. So I don't know. I'm not sure whether council had complaints with a managed plan at the moment. So they don't only 2 plans at the moment with those units. So whether it works, I don't know. These staff can tell me, I suppose.
Dallas, the parking is some distance away from the actual apartment. Is that right?
So there's 2 wings in the tower, and adjacent to one of the wings is parking, and adjacent to the other wing is the parking. So the tower doesn't have any parking below, so we have to go to those garages.
So in essence, you go through common areas.
That's right, yeah.
Used by other residents or residents as
But
such?
those residents wing can't access the tower. They've got a keypad for their own self, a gate outside the Brook High and Collins Street. So they can't exit the tower. They can't come into the unless you've got a fob that they shouldn't have.
So the residents within the tower park there as well, though?
That's right, yes.
Yeah. Okay,
yes.
so they're sharing that sort of common
That's right,
area.
yeah.
And can you just explain the difference? You put in a deputation or representation previously. So how does this application differ, in your opinion, to the previous application?
I read some of the notes from the staff. I read some of the notes from the staff council, and in my opinion, they don't have enough data to say what they're saying. They're comparing One Collins Street to the Walsall with residential units. They're saying also that they're advising the council that it's a mean fee to say how much room should the short-term residents take up in the tower. And also, we didn't have those complaints last time. I just listened to 10 of those. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. If you'd like to... Oh, sorry.
Just
Councillor
one more
Harvey?
question. Could you just tell me again how many units are already operating as short stay accommodation?
Well, from the council's, from the staff from the council, they are saying 3 in the tower and 2 in the wings, I think. Then this one will be 4, and another further one down the track will be 5. So that's 11% in the tower.
Mm-hmm. And what was your anticipation when you moved into this place?
Well, to be honest, I didn't know it was a B&B accommodation. I didn't know it was a short-term stay, and a lot of the other owners didn't know that as well. So it was news to me. I don't have any problem with long-term stays, rentals. They look after the place. They do the right thing all the time. But when you stay in a hotel, I've witnessed people that do the wrong thing. So just bearing in mind, there's a lot of elderly people in the tower, a lot of medical staff, nurses, doctors. I think one was with a wheelchair as well. One's 94. So they need their peace and quiet, and this is a little home for them. They're a community. We know each other. We trust each other. So if you see people coming down the walkway, you don't know them. Well, you start to wonder.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd like to take your seat again, and we'll just wipe the table and chair down before we hear from the applicant. Thanks, Dave. Mr. Robustelli. Thank you. You heard the concerns raised by Mr. Fowler. Perhaps you can address some of those concerns. Thank you.
Have a glass of water, please, Deputy.
Yes, yeah, help yourself.
All right. First of all, thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor and members of council, councillors, for giving me the opportunity to have a response to. I thank as well Mr. Fowler for raising his concerns about the proposal that has been recommended for approval by the Planning Committee of the council. I suppose my pitch is going to be pretty straightforward and simple. We've had the property now for over 10 years, and my wife, girlfriend at the time, now my wife, lived there prior to us getting married and finding our wedding home. We come from an extended family, so once we moved into our house, our wedding house, we've sort of had the place sort of vacant, and only in sort of recent years, because we've got an extended family, we've got constantly family coming and going. We've always had it sort of, we've been fortunate enough to keep it vacant for when they do. Obviously things have changed these sort of last 18 months and that hasn't had we haven't had the opportunity to do that. I've had some personal friends in the property for the purposes of them, in between houses or in construction of building. It came about by me showing interest. Obviously now I'm currently unemployed at the moment after selling my business. So how it came about is that I received a letter with another unit requesting for short-term accommodation too as well, and I thought, well, at the moment, because of the situation, we can't have guests coming, or now, no employment. The property does have running costs. Body corporate's about $4,500. Rates are about $2,500, so it is essentially costing us money. The short-term accommodation concept suited us because whilst we're not having family and guests staying with us, it gives us the opportunity to help with some of the running costs. I have used the platform before, the short-term accommodation market. It's heavily policed as far as the restrictions of who's in there. They've all got police checks. We have the opportunity to choose who we can have and who we can't have stay in there. The noise pollution from Mr. Fowler, what he mentioned about the increase of noise, I'm not sure what merit that has, Deputy Lord Mayor, because there's nothing stopping me from having a personal party in my own residence and disrupting Mr. Fowler's night's sleep, and there are channels there that he can use, just like in any street of the neighbourhood. You call the police for a noise pollution complaint or stuff like that there. I'm happy to, if things go further and it does progress to approval, I'm happy to make some form of compromise as far as keeping the amenities such as the gym as Mr. Fowler spoke about, the pool not being able to use. I'm happy to work together in that sort of small family, if you want to call it that, there concept. I don't know what else much more to say. The car park itself, it's under security, so if someone doesn't have a key, they have no access to it. Again, I did used to live there sometime before, when dating my wife, and it was. I'm not sure. I mean, we live in this, it's in the second block of the city. There must be some form of expectation that there is going to be a little bit of noise. I do agree, Mr. Fowler, there is healthcare workers that work there, but I'd love to see the figures or the portion of how many of them actually live there. That's about it.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it to questions. We'll start with you, Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, you mentioned about running costs.
Yes.
If you were to rent this out, wouldn't that meet that particular overhead that you're talking about?
Correct, Councillor Dutta, but my response to that is that we have an extended amount of families that live interstate, overseas, so the property does get used quite frequently. What suits us about the short-term accommodation market is that if I've got my mother-in-law coming down from Sydney, for argument's sake, and she wants to spend 3 months there, I can't say to a longer-term person who's leasing my property, well, you can get out now, and my mother-in-law's coming. Much as I want to say no sometimes to my mother-in-law, but no. So yeah, it suits us because we do have family coming down, and you know, when they do come down, which is spare of the moment, last minute, we just say, okay, we just block it out, and then we have our family members or friends stay in the property.
Just one further question. Thank you, Chair. With regards to purchasing this place, you said you purchased it 10 years ago. When you bought the place,
yes,
did you realize that the character or the purpose of this was different, you know, for you to rent it or put it on visitor accommodation?
Councillor Dutta, I don't believe short-term accommodation was a huge thing back 10 years ago. It sort of evolved, this short-term accommodation concept, and people wanting to lease out their properties for reasons like I've just mentioned. So no, the answer is no. But again, I don't think the short-term platform started 10 years ago. I could be wrong though.
Alderman Barakas.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Robustelli. Just, I suppose, just to clarify, so you've had that property since well before, I suppose, Airbnb or any of the other short stay things have been in existence.
Correct.
And you did sort of indicate during your remarks, but the representative, there was talks of a management plan and the concerns about who do we talk to. Given that you've indicated that you'd be open to discussing, putting limitations in there as to the extra amenities like the pool and that sort of, in the common areas for tenants or visitors, but would you be open to having a sort of formal plan put in place with a whether it's yourself or whether it's a property manager, with a contact person, that if there is any concerns, if there is any problems, that everybody knows who to contact and who's responsible, and have all that, just so we can try and meet the concerns of the.
I'm not here to rub shoulders with the wrong. I don't want to do that. I don't want to upset anyone. I'm here to obviously hopefully come out with an outcome, and if I can sort of again, like I said, I'm more than happy to do as much as I can to keep Mr. Fowler and other concerned residents of the property, content and reassure them that, that it's, again, and the property itself is, we're looking at doing some, I've had some information, sort of investigating work on the rate, the nightly rates. It's not your bottom end sort of budget property, it's your top end. So, and that's not to say that, the people with that kind of money can't also, be disruptive and make noise too as well. But, again, there'll be a demographic that hopefully, won't cause too much stress and unease to the fellow residents.
Further questions? Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you. I think we've had a very similar application before us a month ago, I think, maybe a little longer. And there's a question we asked the applicant there. Say, for example, you put a time limit on your application, your planning permit, so it's say for 2 years. In that way, the council could monitor whether there has been any complaints, whether there has been any issues arising. At the end of whatever time period it is, 2 or 3 years or whatever it is, then you'd have to apply again. Would you have any strong objection to that?
Happy to go along with it, Councillor Briscoe.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for that.
Right, any further questions? Councillor Coates.
Look, thank you. Just very briefly, I mean, I thank you for your presentation and providing us with your time. You've obviously mentioned it, I think it was yourself or your wife or both of you have had this property now for about 10 years. I was just curious, what's been your experience in owning in that? Do you think, knowing there's others in the complex that are rented out in the short-term market, have you actually experienced any issues yourself? Are you aware if anyone's put in any complaints against yourselves and your place, or with others in the complex?
Councillor Coates, look, my experiences from living there, obviously it's been almost 6 years since I've lived there now, so from memory as well, being there, again, the short-term accommodation hadn't evolved yet, so there was it was non-existent there. But again, you know, we were there and we experienced noises, house parties going along in the precinct. I think, you know, unfortunately the noise, you know, combination of being in the middle of the city and living so close to each other, people going outside on the deck, there are going to be elements of noise. I'm not going to deny that. And again, I think regardless whether they're short-term, long-term, owner-occupied, these are going to be issues that are always going to be raised. Now, depending how people's hearing are at evenings, or you know what bothers them at nights. I mean, this is just part of the. I feel this is just part of the fact of one, living in the city, and two, living in an apartment complex where it's just there must be some form of expectation that there is going to be slightly a noisier environment as opposed to if they lived out in, you know, Sandfly or Judbury or something like that there, where it's remote and, you know, you've got the wilderness to listen to. It's just my opinion.
Right. If there are no further questions, you can take your seat again. Thank you very much. And I'll open the item for discussion. You have a question?
Yes, I can't recall what limit we put on that previous application. Was it 2 or 3 years?
No?
Through you, Chair. I understand it was 2 years.
Yes. Was there any objections to that? Was it appealed?
Through your chair, no, not that I'm aware of.
I think that could be a solution that would satisfy both the applicant, who has said to us that he has no objection, and gives the opportunity for the residents to monitor it and to see whether there are any issues. And in 2 years' time, the person will come back, presumably the applicant will come back and apply for longer. So I'd like to move the officer's recommendation, but it's limited to 2 years from the date of permit.
And did you want to include, thank you, Alderman Briscoe, did you want to include limits to the use of the pool and gym?
I think we'd probably have to do that via advice, because I don't think it would be a condition. I mean, through you to the Director, you couldn't condition not to use facilities, could you?
Policing that would be somewhat problematic. Although I understand that it was the body corporate rules that restricted previous applications, but excluded it from those facilities. So I don't know whether that is correct. So yeah, so there's already some protection through the body corporate rules to limiting those.
So perhaps we should have it as advice anyway. The common areas such as the gym and the pool will not be available to the guests of this short-term accommodation.
Right, thank you. Further discussion, Alderman Baraka.
Thank you, Chair, and I might suggest to Alderman Briscoe as well that we include a management plan. I think as we did last time, with and just ensure that we do have a contact person that
It's in the conditions.
I can. Yeah. So I do have a question. Just in regards to this, suppose there was talk about the body corporate moving, or determining what their position is going to be on the short stay. If they were to make a resolution limiting the number of short stay or limiting any further short stays, would that be a situation where that would preclude us from approving stuff, or would it be a case of we can approve it, they can get the DA, but they wouldn't be allowed to operate as a short stay purely? These concerns are more of a body corporate issue than a planning issue.
Yeah, through you, Chair, that's correct. The body corporate rules wouldn't necessarily dictate our planning decisions, although ultimately they would determine whether they could activate the permit or not.
Yeah, look, I think, and I'll note what Councillor Harvey said last time this came up. There was the discussion about, I think the words is, the ensure that residential development is the primary focus throughout the activity area, I think was the line. And the talks of, one additional short stay might not in and of itself be a dramatic change, but at which point do you determine when a dramatic change has occurred? I think I'll still note that in this particular instance, we're talking about going from 7% to 9%. So the residential still is the primary use, and I don't think that this constitutes a dramatic change. However, I think it might be worth us in the future, maybe even proactively, trying to get some advice on what would actually constitute a dramatic change, or where that line is drawn. Because whilst I think less than 10%, it is still very much overwhelmingly a residential area. There does need to be a line somewhere, and I think we would probably benefit the committee and the council to know at least round about where that line is, as far as what constitutes or doesn't constitute primarily residential function, so we understand where those limits are. I think in this particular case, and noting the concerns of the residents, I think this is still abiding by all the planning regulations. So I think we are limited here. I think the best we can do and the best we should do is ensure that there's a bit of compromise there and some tools there to allow residents that have issues to have them expressed and have them dealt with. But I think maybe in the future it's worth us proactively getting some advice on this.
Raka, so what is your suggestion there, Mr. Noy? Because it seems to be a very sort of arbitrary line.
Well, it is, and as I commented last time, it really does depend on the specific circumstances. I think in relation to the units within the wings where they have their separate access points, you could tolerate a higher density without compromising that residential amenity. But if there was a similar concentration within the tower where there's much more common areas that are used, then that sort of higher density might be not as tolerable under those circumstances. So and if it was concentrated on one floor, would that be would that be much more acceptable rather than it being dispersed over the tower? So we'd need to consider all of those factors before we could come up with any definitive position.
Further discussion, Councillor Coates?
Look, briefly for discussion. Having read the application and the advice of the officers, fundamentally I just think this is an allowed activity within the zone, and I find it difficult to vote against. I'm noting in the report it says it still remains below 10%, which would be what would seem to be the big ground for refusal, and so I think if it did end up in tribunal, the City of Hobart would lose. That said, I think it was very pleasing from the applicant to hear, if you like, the provenance of this property. It wasn't just a recently purchased, trying to maximise return doing it. There's actual circumstances that have caused this to happen. They are, we do know that people go out and put it on Airbnb illegally without a permit. They're actually doing the right thing here. It's been a property that they've used, that they intend to continue using for family members, not as a short-term visitor accommodation, although I guess family members are visiting, arguably. But so look, it's I think fundamentally it fits a scheme, and I'll be supporting with the amendments. And it was very pleasing to hear that. What I didn't hear as well was, they've owned this property for some time. Obviously, they've used it and had family visiting before, and obviously not others, because they didn't have a permit for it. But we didn't hear about any specific issues with this owner, with this unit. So I know that's very anecdotal, but that is pleasing to note. So look, I'll be supporting Alderman Briscoe's motion and would urge others to do so as well.
So we couldn't have heard anything because there is body corporate anyway. And they're not passing that
Well, I
information
guess
on.
what we didn't hear was a whole bunch of people responding saying, look, this is a property that's a known party house, this is a scenario where there's significant concern, etc., which may have been the case with some owners of some properties.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
A
and
couple of
Councillor
things. Could I
Duffy.
hear the amendment again, please? First.
Mr Banks?
Alderman Briscoe's amendment is around the lease for 2 years, to be reviewed after 2 years, and also an advice clause in relation to the common areas of the gym and the pool not being used.
Okay, and can I add some advice to the body corporate that they prepare for the council's benefit a 6-monthly report? If they're keeping an eye on Airbnb in the building and we're not getting complaints, so should they be, well, could we encourage them to send us a report every 6 months just so we can keep an overview of whether there are constant complaints? That's something we could advise?
Yeah, look, I think that would be a separate resolution. Seeing correspondence be sent to the body corporate requesting a 6-monthly update of any complaints that they might have received in relation to these matters.
All right, would that be a foreshadowed then?
Foreshadowed motion, yep. We can-
Okay, and just to summarise, so we've had apartments 8, 9 and 29, apartments 37, 53 and 57, all short stay now, and one coming over the horizon, which is 35, so that'll be 7 apartments. So what percentage would that take us up to?
Well, that would be over the 9%.
Over
So
9%.
You'd be talking, if the application that's still awaiting further information, I might say that that's been in for nearly 2 years.
Yeah.
So that might in fact expire, but it would take it to the around the 11%.
11%, yeah. Because I think that's, well, personally, I think we've hit the ceiling already in any sort of unit complex. So I'll support the amendments, but I'll struggle to support the recommendation at this point, unless there's anything, dramatic said.
Thank you, Chair. There's always alternative viewpoints, and I think the alternative viewpoints for me is that there are strong points made by the respondent with regards to the complaints made, and secondly, I think the other point for me to note here that there are some assumptions made by the staff on the report. Now, the only consolation for me is to accept the amendment made by Alderman Briscoe. I think is for me a middle ground, and therefore I would support this on that basis. Thank you.
Okay. Look, I have difficulty supporting this, despite Mr Rapastelli's deputation or response to the deputation. I think fundamentally this is a residential complex, and fundamentally Wapping should be for residential use. Now there are discretions, obviously. This wouldn't be before us otherwise, but I still regard this as a very difficult one to support, given the impacts on more and more people. We've had more representations this time round, so I won't be supporting the recommendation. So we'll have those amendments heard first. So.
Oh, they're not. Did I move the motion? Yeah, I moved the motion. I just included those.
Okay. All right. So we have the motion as amended. I'll put that. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? No. So show of hands. Those in favour?
Alderman Briscoe, Alderman Barakis, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Coates,
And those against?
Councillor Harvey and the Deputy Lord Mayor.
And the foreshadowed motion, does anybody need to hear that again? It's in relation to the body corporate being contacted
Providing the council with a 6-month.
after 6 months, yes?
Just a question. Like, I don't disagree with the sentiment of the motion. Would it not be maybe more beneficial, rather than a 6-monthly report, to provide as advice a contact point that, you know, if there are concerns, that they can be raised directly with council? So if they are actionable and they are complaints that need to be enforced, or there is enforcement that can and should be taken, that can happen. That can happen directly, as opposed to happening sort of 6 months, 6 months after the fact, and we can compile that information ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's an alternative. But I think you'd want to do that anyway. Enter into some dialogue with the body corporate to ensure that they've got an understanding of who they can contact in relation to those matters.
I might just suggest that to the mover, that might be potentially, it might be a way that might result in immediate action if there are complaints that are raised that deserve action.
Do you want to?
Well, I assume that if there's serious complaints that it comes to council, but it's all those other niggling things as well. That's why I'm interested in having a compilation of all things that are ongoing. You know, the bins got kicked over on Tuesday, and all the little things, just so we get an appreciation of the impact of. I'm happy to include that as advice as well. That report things to the council if required, but also we encourage you to compile a 6-monthly report so the council can get an overview of the impact of or non-impact of short stay accommodation.
Thank you, Alderman Briscoe.
Yeah, look, generally I like the idea of reporting. The idea is that you have a body corporate for a purpose, and that is the governing of the stratum titles. Does the council really want to know about kicking over bins, which could be anyone? They would have a level of proof to say that they were short-term stay accommodation people, or so I'd like to think that if they're, and I don't disagree that we should have a report, but I think a report from them, if they wish, of the things that they know for a fact are attributed. Well, we don't want every little complaint as a report. That doesn't. It just gives an idea of how a body corporate works. It doesn't give us any help to make decisions like this in the future.
Councillor Harvey, is that?
I think the motion was that they provide a report on the impact of short stay accommodation in the building.
Okay.
Of issues that have arisen from.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we've got to narrow it down. Yeah.
The officers will work it out, and it's not. They don't have to do it. I'm just suggesting this, that they might want to prepare a report for us in 6 months describing the impact of short stay accommodation on the facility. Yeah.
Mr. Banks, do you want to read that back? Okay.
In your own words. Yeah.
We've got it.
That the council requests the body corporate to provide a 6-monthly report on issues that impact short stay accommodation within the complex.
No, which
not impact short stay, but
which are related to the short stay.
Residents within that.
Yeah.
They've impacted.
Yeah, attributed. Thank you. All right. Yes, Lord Mayor.
Just because I'll have to vote on it in a little while. What's the purpose of the report? Is that because we may remove the permit at some stage, or that we're going to sort of be the sort of...
Councillor Harvey?
Well, for me, apparently things occur that don't get reported to council but get reported to the body corporate, and we don't hear about these things. So I would encourage the body corporate to prepare a report so they can submit it to us rather than every single thing. Just give us a 6-monthly update so we get the feel of what's happening in the premises, in the complex with regard to the short stay accommodation. And they don't have to. I don't care if they do or not, but I just encourage it so we all keep abreast of the impacts of short stay accommodation.
There's no ability to withhold the permit once we've issued it.
No, I'm not talking about that. No, it's purely just for information so we understand the impact. Yeah.
All right, so I'll...
But I don't know whether the Lord Mayor, through you, Chair, I don't know whether the Lord Mayor was here when we actually put a 2-year limit. I don't know whether you were there. So the permit is for 2 years, and then for the applicant would have to come back and apply for the permit again. So I think Alderman Harvey's motion helps have the evidence.
Okay. So
Alderman
I'll
Briscoe? I
put,
don't know whether, was there, was she there?
I'll put the motion as moved by Councillor Harvey. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against, items carried. Meeting closed. Thank you. And this will be considered at full council